Well, hello everyone, and welcome. I'm Danny Lichtenfeld, Director of the Brattleberry Museum. So pleased to be here with you this evening and really looking forward to tonight's conversation with Jennifer Mack-Watkins, David Rios Ferreira, and Fayemi Shakur, followed by a Q&A with all of you. This event tonight is the first of several that the Brattleboro Museum is presenting in the coming weeks in connection with the exhibit Children of the Sun, which opened here on March 18th and will be on view through June 13th. The exhibit features artwork by Jennifer Mack-Watkins and a poem by Fayemi Shakur, and it was beautifully curated by David Rios Ferreira. It's Jennifer's first solo museum show, and it's a knockout on so many levels. The work itself is such a joy to see and hear, and the way it ties in with African-American heritage in Vermont is so powerful and moving, and especially meaningful to us here in Brattleboro. It's truly a privilege for us to get to introduce this work to the world. And for that, we're deeply thankful to Jennifer, Fayemi, and David. In just a moment, I'm going to ask David to come on the screen and join me, and then David will be introducing Jennifer and Fayemi. The plan is that they're going to talk for about 45 minutes or so, maybe an hour, and then we'll open it up to your questions and comments. If you'd like to submit a question or a comment, if you're here via Zoom, then please use the Q&A button on your screen. You can do that at any time, and then we'll get to the questions at the end of the talk. If you're watching on Facebook Live, you can type your questions or comments there too, and we'll keep an eye on that. Okay, with that housekeeping taken care of, I'd like to ask David Rios Ferreira to turn on his camera and mic now and join me. And while David is doing that, I'm just going to tell you a little bit about him. David was born in the Bronx, and he's based in the New York City area. David's a visual artist, an independent curator, and director of public programs and curator of contemporary art at the Children's Museum of Manhattan. David has exhibited in galleries and museums throughout the US and abroad. He's won numerous awards and commissions, and he's held residencies at the Lower East Side Print Shop, the Elizabeth Foundation for the Arts, the Center for Book Arts, among others. We had the pleasure of exhibiting David's work at the Brattleboro Museum a few years ago in the same gallery, in fact, where Jennifer's work is now on view. And it's really been wonderful to have the opportunity to work with David in this capacity as a curator as well. So David, thank you again for being here. Thank you for bringing Jennifer's work to Brattleboro. Really looking forward to this conversation. So I'm happy to hand it over to you.
Thank you, Danny. Thank you so much. Thank you, Danny, and thank you, the Brattleboro Museum, for hosting us this evening, hosting this discussion. And thank you, everyone who's joining us this evening. I thought it was important before we even get started to recognize what's happening in the world right now and take a moment because of what might come up in our discussion. Take that moment to recognize those we have lost to police violence. And so we remember and we say their names: Dwayne Wright, Adam Toledo, Richard Brooks, Daniel Prude, Breonna Taylor, George Floyd, Tatiana Jefferson, and unfortunately the countless other Black and Brown sisters and brothers we have lost. There's a lot of work to be done, obviously, and I think while yesterday's verdict provides some semblance of promise, I'm gonna, for this talk and for this evening, we're gonna focus on that word, promise, because at the heart of Jennifer's show, she presents us with that. You know, she presents us with that sense of hope, that sense of promise. And so, like the narratives and the images and the history shared in the exhibition, our talk this evening is going to focus on humanity, individuality, the realities, hope, and joy. And so it is my joy to be with these two powerhouses, artist, writer, and advocate Fayemi Shakur, and our artist of the hour and the exhibition artist, the artist of Children of the Sun, Jennifer Mack-Watkins. So just really quickly, let's learn a little bit about Jennifer, and then I'll have her come on. So I'm going to share my screen and to get a sense of her work. and then I'm going to invite her to join us in our discussion. So Jennifer is exhibited in several museums and galleries, like the New York Museum, the International Print Center of New York, Rush Arts Gallery, Brooklyn Museum, and most recently, Miami Scope. She's a recipient of the Elizabeth Catlett Printmaking Award from Hampton University and Museum. Her works are in the permanent collections of Agnes Scott College, the Newark Public Library, and Clark Atlanta University. Jennifer was recognized by the International Makuhanda Conference at Tokyo University, presenting at the conference at both Tokyo and Hawaii, and participating in the Makuhanda Innovation Laboratory in Yamanashi, Japan. Jennifer holds a Bachelor of Fine Arts from Morris Brown College, a Master's in Arts Education from Tufts University, and a master's degree with a focus on printmaking from the Pratt Institute. When Chief Curator Mara Williams approached me to curate the exhibitions at Brattleberry, I did that thing that you really shouldn't do when someone's talking to you, is that your mind starts to wander. And I immediately started thinking about who I wanted to bring to the table, who I wanted to, who I thought would be a great fit for the museum and an awesome platform. And Jennifer's work just kept floating to my head, in part because her work, her and I like to joke, we're kind of history geeks. And not only did I think her work would be a great fit, not only did I think her work would be a great fit, but I also thought that there would be this great relationship between her work and Brattleberry itself and the exhibition space. I found that there could be this nice conceptual and aesthetic interplay between Jennifer's work and the architecture of what once was Brattleberry's. For those who don't know, the museum was once Brattleberry's Union Station. And so the ticket gallery where the exhibition is held, with its conserved moldings, its countertops, and its ticket windows, I thought would have a great interplay with the same sort of essence that Jennifer brings to her work. So Jennifer's work is intimate, detailed, it's heavily influenced by research and history, and it's all done through the lens of this personal narrative. And I think that's what really brings both her work and it living within this space and within this time. It brings it to a crucial threshold that I think it's just, it's an amazing show. And I'm going to ask Jennifer to join us to talk a little bit more about the exhibition. So Jennifer, do you want to turn off your mic and mic? Great. So Jennifer, I just want to start by tell us about the journey that brought you to this body of work.
Okay, well, I think the journey for me began when David called me up and, David, you called me up and you were like, would you be interested in showing at the Brattleberry Museum? And I said, where is this, where is it located? And I was like, well, he said it's in Vermont. So I said, okay. So I said, well, if I'm gonna make a show, I think the journey for me definitely started when I wanted to know about the history of African Americans in Vermont, because I'm really interested in always putting some type of historical aspect into my work. So I started to immediately start to research what was some of the African Americans who were some of the African Americans who lived in Vermont. So I came upon the African American Trail, and I came upon Daisy Turner's name. And so I said, well, I wanted to be a female, and I liked the photograph that I found. And so through looking at the research that I found from the Vermont Folklife Art Center, I found Daisy Turner. And her story really spoke to me because, she was one of the few families that lived in Brattleberry during this time. And I think after going through the book that Jane C. Beck wrote and talking back and forth with the Vermont Folklife Art Center, I started to think about how can I make this be part of the story, the central part of the story, and really have a connection to the people who live in Vermont and the work that I create. So then I started to listen to some of the recordings, and thanks to the center, they're able to document all these recordings. She lived almost a little over 100 years old. And so I was able to listen to the recordings, and I fell in love with the Dolly story. So I was like, you know what, I really want to make sure that this show is gonna like give me joy, like as I watched my children play, during the time when the pandemic started to heighten, during a time where protests were happening in every state. It was really an unrestful time, and so I wanted to figure out how I can bring joy through history and merging the past and present together to make this exhibition. So that's kind of where the journey began.
And can you talk a little bit about the title, Children of the Sun?
Okay. Well, Children of the Sun, I wanted to use that title because I was like, I wanted to look up like how have Black children been represented in the past. And so, in the past, it was really difficult to find, Black positive representation, especially during that 1900s and so on. And so then I fell across the book, the Brownies book that was written by W.E.B. And the introduction of the first monthly issue was, it said Children of the Sun for all children. And so I chose Children of the Sun as a title because the sun is really important, right? It gives us warmth, it gives us light, it gives us, food to eat because it helps the plants to grow and the roots. And so I felt like all those different components of how important the sun is, or how important the children are to us, to make sure that we always remember to like think about joy and hope because they are our future. So that's where the title kind of also tied in together.
And what drew you to that publication? I mean, so that publication ran for about, I think it was a little less than a year, right? Like about 11 months.
Yeah.
And what was it was W.E.B. and then there were two other editors on the team. Like, what was the motivation?
Well, I felt like once I saw the book, I remember seeing NAACP had a photograph of children dressed in white at a march, and the march was I thought it was like a celebration, like a regular march dressed up, but then it was about a protest of a race riot response, and everyone in New York and probably everywhere else came to this march to respond against what was happening during that time. And so I decided to look further in the book, and then I found out that there were like parents who would like basically send in these photographs of their children dressed up in white. And I was like, wow, I said, what would that book look like today? So even when I made the work, I always thought that this should be kind of like a book response. Like I could see these as book illustrations. So it was like kind of like a homage to like what the book would look like today, but just not with real people, but with dolls. But basically I wanted to really kind of like capture the illustrative era of that time.
And so you merged that sort of inspiration from Daisy Turner's narrative of the baby doll. So for our audience who's not familiar with that story, could you share a little bit about that? Like what is the Daisy Turner baby doll story?
Okay, so the baby doll story, or Dolly poem. So basically, she was asked to do a poem by her teacher in Vermont, and she had a stereotypical doll, probably looked like like a head wrap, and probably like just like some type of help, kind of like just like a not really positive representation of a doll that she was given, and she had to do a poem that her teacher told her to do, and she decided not to do that poem because she felt like it didn't represent who she was, and she wanted to give voice to who she was as an individual and to the doll. So she rebelled in her form, right, through the doll, and she was able to like make this poem up, kind of like on the spot. And she's like, like you are important. Like basically that's what she was saying. Like you're not going to be seen as second best. Like you are really important. So she told the doll that, and it was something that she was telling to the doll, but something that she also embraced herself. And so she recited this poem, and then after that, she actually won the Oracle Award for her presentation. So she went against her father because her father said, go ahead and do it. But she's like, no. And then she went against her teacher, and she ended up winning the award. So I felt like when you hear the voice, if you're able to go see the show in person or able to listen to it online, the voice just resonates even to this day. And every time I hear it, I just get chills. So definitely hearing the story, I think it would have been different if I would just read it, but the fact that I had access to like hearing audio and reading the story, it made it really, really resonate within me as an artist.
And for those, just to give a little bit more context to when Daisy delivered this, right? So this is, I made sure to make sure I got the math right. This is in 1891. She's 8 years old, and she's probably maybe the only Black child in a predominantly white classroom at the time. I don't know if it was the entire school or a classroom, but so despite that, right? I mean, like, could you talk a little bit about like what was so, how did you feel reading about and hearing from her own voice, right? This story that at 8 years old, in a time that is so significantly far from the civil rights movement, for this 8-year-old to stand up to her class and recite this poem. What did that feel like?
Well, it feels like, you know, of course, like, you know, you think about like history, you think about present times and how children are still at the forefront of making sure that they understand what change they would like to see in the world. You think about the civil rights era, how there's a children's march, and children were involved in making sure that, you know, their voices were heard and standing up against inequalities that were happening. And so I feel like it's, even though it happened like in the 1890s, the same thing has happened where children have had to have the balance between, like, you know, being playful, growing up, and, you know, using their voice to say, you know, this is going to be, you know, how we want to see the world. And so I feel like even though it was like back in the 1890s, these same things still exist today as far as what children have to do to make sure their voices are heard. And I feel it's important that we continue to listen to them, continue to guide them, and also always to be a positive representation of what we would like for them to be as adults. So we have to be the model. So all that to say is that, you know, even though she was 8 years old, like, I can see the youngest child even today having to make sure that they're like, hey, this is me, this is who I am. And so I think it's important that we continue to embed that. So everyone doesn't have to feel like they have to be the same, or you have to be this, you have to be that. So I feel it's important that that we take on these same kind of ideas of what Daisy had and still incorporate that into our own lives, into our children's lives today.
And sticking with this idea of like positive representations and this idea of like this interplay between childhood and adulthood, could you quickly talk about the titles of these works?
Yeah. So for example, on the slide that you're on, this is May and Gillian. And so the names kind of go through historically, like, you know, who has represented, you know, like America's history. Like, people like to try to say, okay, this is like Black history, this is history. Yeah, everyone might have come from the African diaspora, right? Or like who I'm representing as names, right? But it's all still part of American history. And so they all have made contributions to their careers or their intelligence or their passion, or you know, what is important to like society to make sure that they see a change. So you think about Katherine Johnson, you know, what would that have been like for her to be the only, you know, one of the only African American females working at NASA during these times, you know? And so how was that for her to be able to have to go through her daily job to do what she's done, to continuously prove who she was as an individual, and make such an impact, you know, as far as like exploration of space, you know, and just taking like a passion that she had from such a young child. It took her parents, right, at a young child to continue to, you know, motivate her to, you know, do those math, you know, do that math, like continue practicing, you know, it's going to pay off. And it did, right? You think about Gillian, same thing. So I added some, like, not only just like political or like, you know, artists, but I try to add like, you know, literature, science, the arts, and try to incorporate, because they're all very important part of what education is today. And so, and I really had fun making the May and Gillian diptych, because I was like, you know what would it look like if I put these dolls on the moon, you know? So I decided to put the moon there, and I really had a lot of fun playing around with putting the moon and making my own stars. You know what, there's stars that exist, but these are my stars. So I was like, I'm gonna make these stars, you know? And so then I was like, you know what, the sun is very important, and I want to have a really like different view of what the sun looks like. And so from the sun, I incorporated the sun and the moon and the stars all together. And I wanted to eventually I would like to add more dolls over time, but just some of the names, I just want people to, like, if you don't know who May and Gillian is, then type, you know, I want people to be able to come to this exhibition, you know, look it up and say, well, who's Gillian? And like, who's May? Who's Catherine? Who's Betty? Who's, you know, who's Elizabeth? Who's Langston? And so from there, I would like for, you know, not just for, you know, children to look it up, but some adults might need some education. So I'm hoping that, you know, the work that you see can make you think about, okay, well, why did she choose these names? And then once you find it, you're like, wow, this is why they're here, and that's why they deserve to be here.
And, you know, one thing that for people to understand about Jennifer's vision for the exhibition was, it wasn't just about the production of these works, but it was about the entire experience that the visitor encounters when they enter the gallery. And so, as she mentioned, if you're there in person or if you're on the online virtual virtual tour, to be able to tap into Daisy's voice, to hear the words she spoke as she was interviewed at, I believe, in like 1983, 1984. She was able to share these stories with the folklorist that recorded her story, and so we share that in the exhibition. But it was interesting to talk to Jennifer in the planning around this and think about that holistic approach. So not just looking at image, but really respecting the research and the context for her work. And so she was able to bring on not just this historical context with hearing Daisy's voice, but then invites a contemporary voice in Fayemi Shakur to not only reflect on Daisy's words, but also on the ideas of representation and beauty. So I'm going to talk a little bit about Fayemi and give you a little bit of context before I invite her to join us for the conversation. So Fayemi is a writer, interdisciplinary artist, and arts advocate, and currently serves as the Arts and Cultural Affairs Director for the City of Newark, New Jersey. As a cultural critic and interdisciplinary artist, Fayemi's writing has been featured in the New York Times, Hyperallergic, CNN Style, Vice, International Review of African American Art, Nueva Luz Photographic Journal, High Side Magazine, and MFON, Women Photographers in African Diaspora, among other books and publications. She was a critical studies arts in residence at the Center for Photography at Woodstock, an artist in residence at Shine Portrait Studio, and feminist in residence at Project for Empty Space. In 2019, Fayemi founded The Womb of Violet, a project-based collective of Black women writers, poets, and interdisciplinary artists that yielded a 146-page limited edition risograph artist book. This anthology is archived in collections like the Newark Public Library, the Schomburg Center for Research in Black Culture, the Beinecke Rare Book and Manuscript Library at Yale University, and the Library of Congress. So I'm going to invite Fayemi to turn on her mic and camera to join us. Thank you, Fayemi, for joining us this evening. So tell us more about A Womb of Violet, but also what motivated this anthology, and what was it like to collaborate with artists like Jennifer and other writers in the Newark, New Jersey, national, tri-state area?
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you for inviting me and having me first. I think I was just really interested in healing as an act of subversion against oppression and harm. And I was really interested in creating a safe space for Black women artists who I knew in my own Newark community, but maybe didn't have a direct relationship with them. I would see them in passing at events, and we'd say, "Hey, girl, nice show, beautiful, you look great," but I didn't really know that much about them. And I wondered if they felt the same way as I did about having someone to really share your work with on a deeper level, having someone to support you, and also thinking about the purpose of our art in these times and what politically we should be responding to and how that could support our own healing. We eventually were invited to Martha's Vineyard, which you see here, for Art on the Vine, which is an exhibition created by founder Jessica Stafford Davis. And that was just a really powerful time for us to be together, to celebrate one another, to relax. None of us, I think, had been to the vineyard before. And so we visited Oaks Bluff and shared our work with a larger audience, and significant and meaningful to us, I think.
So Fayemi, tell us a little bit about the anthology overall. So you wanted it to be this response, and then what did the writers and artists that how did you go about thinking about who was going to join you in these efforts, and what was the motivation around the works that were going to go into this anthology?
Yes, it was part of my residency at Project for Empty Space, and I was really curious I'm a writer, so of course, love books, but the opportunity to make a book by hand was appealing to me, to experiment with risograph, which is kind of an imperfect, a very experimental style of printing. I knew some printmakers in my own community, like Jennifer, who I had met, who was also a board member at the time at the North Print Shop. And so I wanted to also honor Black feminist writers and thinkers who came before us and celebrate their work and provide almost a medicine in a type of way, using their quotes, as you see here throughout the book. This one, Toni Kari Bambara, an incredible Black feminist. I love this quote: "Revolution begins with the self in the self." A Womb of Violet, the title itself, was inspired by Alice Walker's In Search of Our Mother's Garden. And in that book, she provides a definition of womanism. And she says, womanism is to feminism as pink is to lavender. And so elaborating on that color theme, we came up with a Womb of Violet and thinking about what feminism means to Black women, and really highlighting the issues and needs that are significant to us. So in that book, there are stories, poems, art reflecting motherhood, reflecting stories about sexual assault, reproductive rights, and identity. And I've always connected, since I met Jennifer, with her work around gender and identity and these healing aspects of where we need to go. And joy is a part of that. And we can't get to joy until we also are willing to name our oppression, to confront it. And I'm just very honored to be in company of women who are doing that in so many various creative ways through their art.
So could you talk a little bit about, you know, knowing Jennifer, how you guys connected, and her contribution to the book?
Well, Jennifer, she reminded me, we actually met at another institution, right? Algira, the Center for Contemporary Art. I worked there for a while as a manager of public programs. And then she was in a show that I was organizing for another gallery, City Without Walls. And I really started to pay even more attention to her work around gender and identity. And so when I had the opportunity, I just asked her if she wanted to be a part of this collective, and she's just so immediately joyful. And yes, you know, and a lot of the women were. And I really appreciated, here you see an image she created for the first book. Everything she does is by hand and so thoughtful. And I really appreciate earlier in this talk how you pointed out the level of research that artists put into making their work. I am also equally inspired by, because I don't think people always know that, how much research that artists do. It's laborious and it's intentional. And I really respect that about Jennifer's practice.
And so you're working on, so those were images from the first volume, right? So you actually recently announced the second volume's coming out. So could you talk a little bit about that? Talk about, and Jennifer, maybe you can jump into about this new work that you've created for the next volume of the anthology. And, Fayemi, what do you hope this new anthology covers or addresses that maybe the first volume didn't?
Mm-hmm. I love this image that Jennifer created. And for this second volume, the theme is Blackness, Resistance, and Being. And so I asked the contributors to consider some of our feminist icons, like Audre Lorde, and the significance of some of the words that they shared with us, some of the lessons and the wisdom that they shared with us, such as caring for myself is a political act. And I wanted to examine some of the context and meaning for other women behind some of their words. And I wanted to know how they were feeling and dealing with the pandemic and the protests, and asked if they could share work either from past work or current work that examines some of those themes. And Jennifer, on the spot, like it didn't even take her any time to create this, what I feel like is a very powerful image. And I'll let Jennifer talk about, how she did this and the themes that she's exploring here.
Thank you, Fayemi. So I feel like when I got the invitation to do another book, I was like, yes, I would love to, contribute again. And so I immediately started to sketch out. I started to look at the quote and I was like, okay, self-care, care, what's going on in my mind during the pandemic. And so I felt like, I was juggling, trying to understand like how to like, be able to like juggle like work and like work from home and then also like take care of my family. So like the two smaller like subjects, those are my children, and then the one on the far right on top of the house, that's my husband. And so I wanted to think about like how I'm trying to like think about the house and the home, taking care, making sure there's food for my family, making sure I'm doing my job at work. And then I have like clouds and tears. And so I feel like the tears representing me like, okay, at some moments I was really, really, really like not always so hopeful. Like I remember just crying when the pandemic just started. I was like, I just had my son in past December, and he couldn't even experience the world as my first daughter did, and I didn't know how to protect them. And then the protests and the police brutality continue happening today. And so I felt like I had so much to protect them from, and I thought the best place for them to be was in the home. And I also thought about like Wizard of Oz. I was like, you know what? Like Dorothy was going through some stuff. Like, she was trying to, figure out, where her home was. And then like this tornado just, like, that's how the pandemic happened to us. Like it just happened. And then it just whipped stuff up in a different way. And that's kind of how the tornado happened in the Wizard of Oz. So I actually took the photograph from the set of Wizard of Oz and put that on her back. And then kind of like took some references to Judith Jameson, Revelation dance repertoire, and also looked at some past illustrations by Jacob Lawrence. Like he was really into like helping other literary compositions and books during that time. And so I looked at all those things continuously, like Fayemi said, research to get out the idea. And I think it took me maybe less than a week, maybe a couple days to just, basically take cut paper and an X-Acto blade and just got working on a design. So it was really fun to make.
I was really floored that you turned that around so quickly. And I just also felt that space of separation, of not being able to see my friends and to comfort my friends and be comforted by them, that we could still create work together. And I'm just so grateful. I want to get that quote right too, by Audre Lorde. So it's caring for myself is not self-indulgence. It is self-preservation, and that is an act of political warfare. And so when Audre Lorde was talking about self-care, she wasn't talking about taking a bath and putting on masks. She was talking about our literal humanity. And in other words, if we don't care for ourselves, first of all, who will? And we must. And so first and foremost, I want to care for my sisters and demonstrate that in a meaningful way, to document and archive their work. And that was really the purpose of A Womb of Violet. So this is the cover image of the next volume by Shoshana Weinberger. It's called Doppelganger. And this is a 30-storied mural that I can't even believe we did this, Jennifer.
And Fayemi, you're also, just to remind everyone who's listening, this isn't just the anthology, but you're talking about, you've built the collective, right? So the collective produced this brand new mural in Newark.
Yes, so we conceived the ideas for this mural in our city The large woman figure in purple is Gladys Grower Barker. She was the oldest living artist in our city. She opened the first gallery in the city, and she passed away just a few months before we could debut and show this to her. But here she appears as a mother mountain, kind of looking over our city, and you can see it quite a range away. We worked with muralist Lacroix Nunwa and Kelly Pravard to create the actual design. We came up with the symbolism about what was important to us. The other figure is Bria Knight, who also passed away at a young age of 26. And she was an incredible poet, a hairstylist who did my and and to include her as a form of intergenerational conversation about women who influenced our arts community. And then we have to the right some young girls from Haiti that were taken by Queen Moore, another member of our collective, who are staring this gaze defiantly, almost distrusting. And then there's a quote by Lucille Clifton, another poet, that says, "Come celebrate with me that every day something that has tried to kill me and has failed." And I love this work of art that we created together.
That was a lot of fun. I just even like there was a lot of survey, a lot of questions for you. You had like, what themes or what, symbolism would you like to see in the mural, and what quotes and who should be in the mural, and just I just like how she was able to like do all this like through email and through virtual and through this virtual space. And we voted and we thought about who should be doing the mural, and it was just fun just working together, making something beautiful if I knew it for years and years on to come.
No, it's amazing. And I have the pleasure of being able to see it from when I travel in and out of my studio. And so it's a phenomenal work. And I think the range in which you both work and the collaborative nature so speaks to just a number of levels in the way in which we as a community have to join together in order to persevere in these times and continue to persevere. But I want to take a moment now to remember that you've had this history of collaboration, and so Fayemi, you were able to reflect on the words of Daisy Turner and the work that Jennifer produced for Children of the Sun. And so I want to invite you to be able to read and recite the poem that you created, a commissioned work, essentially, just as lovely as the others.
Mm-hmm. Yes, that's the title of the poem. Listening to Daisy's poem, Dolly, I was inspired by it and wrote this. I remember, as a little girl, I always preferred the black Barbie. I loved having a doll whose skin looked like mine. We'd play and dream, laugh. We gave our dolls black girl names. We'd do their hair and dress them up for a night on the town. We'd pretend to live in pink and blue mansions, carefree black girls, toes dipped in tap water pools made of plastic. Oh, the sea and the reality. What is free life for a black girl? How racism makes them forget their dreams too soon and just what they are here to do. Do what pleases you, black girl. Stay right in the fight, but no need to prove your value. You're crowned, bought, and paid for, black boys too. You are worthy of joy, worthy of safety, deserving of a childhood filled with play. You are just as lovely as the others. Snap, snap,
Thank you.
snap.
Yes, thank you.
So
Thank you so
that,
much.
Jennifer really inspired me to do that, just thinking about all the things she was exploring in this exhibition about play and childhood and how important it is that we build our children with this, with self-love in this world, and how brave Daisy had to be,
Mhm.
like you said, when she stood up to her teacher and read that poem. That was in the late 1800s. I would have been terrified. But it was her father also who
Right.
built her up and encouraged her to be outspoken and speak her truth. And that just resonated with me so much. And we should take that example for our own children today and do the same.
Yeah, I mean, I think the words you're adding, I mean, and this goes back to Jennifer's vision of sort of this holistic approach, right? Of the image, the history, your words coming together for, really contextualizing what it means to, this idea of representation and this idea of beauty. So I'm going to take your words as sort of a jumping off point for our Q&A, our question, our discussion. And I felt like the question that you pose in your text is both a hypothetical, is both an assertion, and is both something that is a desire to be answered. And I feel like the questions you pose in your work and the images and the narratives that Jennifer presents us with is sort of this amazing slippage between time, one that looks at the past, one that looks at the future. So um I wanted to ask you both to take this question, it's essentially this hypothetical question that you asked Fayemi, and really think about it. And Jennifer, I wanted to start with you. What is free life for a Black girl?
Wow. I think where to begin. So I feel like what is life for a free Black girl, right? It would be to like be able to be imaginative, being able to dream, and even if the dreams don't come true, it's something that she can continue to persist until she can at least attempt to get to those dreams. And if she doesn't know how, she can use the resources in her community or use her family and network and friends to get to what she would like to, her goal for her life. And if she wants to have, a pink and blue and this kind of, a dream house here, she can get that dream house, and know that she has to work hard for it, and know that nothing is going to be given to her. And if it's given, it's because it's been earned. And when you earn something, it to accept it, and but just know that you have to work hard for it, and nothing will be given to you so easily. You have to fight, right? Not fight like this, but like you have to be resilient to be able to understand how you have to continue to endure to get to where you want to be in life. And I think it also would be for a free Black girl, I feel like also to feel safe, to feel
Mm.
safe in her own skin, to feel safe walking down the street, feel safe to like go to the store to just, buy, something special for herself and not have to worry about, if someone's going to be overlooking her or if something's going to happen in her surrounding area that can harm her and other people. To be free would also be able to like be able to recognize that if you are a person that has a vision and you see things that are not happening, you make those things happen and you envision it. And then you make it happen because you know it doesn't exist, but you know it's important for this to happen. And so just being able to recognize, being able to be a visionary, is a gift in itself. So I think for me, it's like imagination, understanding the gift of being a visionary and just being safe in her own skin and just being safe in her own community and wherever she goes. And I feel like, and if she wants to travel, she should be able to travel wherever she goes, and be able to make connections and networks wherever she goes because people will want to surround themselves just by being around her because of her energy. So it kind of goes, it's deeper than just the doll. It's deeper than a dollhouse. It's deeper than the works that that you see. But for me, that person is me. And so I really enjoyed hearing Fayemi's poem. I said, wow, this is what I was trying to say, and I felt like it's just a great thing to be able to think about what it is to be free. So I like to hear Fayemi because I can go on and on. Like to be free, I can keep going, but Fayemi, you can take it from here.
I agree with you. It's safety. And what is safety? I think some of the things you just said, people take for granted that they can do and be all of these things without questioning their safety, and maybe don't recognize what life is like for Black children, Black girls, Black people. We do not have a sense of safety for our children. And that reality is painful. And I have to unfortunately call the name of Ma'Khia Bryant, who was just shot
Mm-hmm.
and killed yesterday.
Yeah.
And people are saying about her, well, she's life. So, you know, the police did what they had to do. But we've seen too many instances of violence among white people and white children, and they have been allowed to walk away unharmed. And why are our lives and our children's lives not given the same value? But I agree, a free life is also a life of imagination, that we can reimagine things uh, and spaces and dreams that may not exist today and create them. Because at one point in time, we were told things that we couldn't be and couldn't have and couldn't do. And we have them now.
Yep.
And so we have to, a free life is knowing that we can do that. We can be that. We can be beautiful on purpose. And there is hope. And you're free. Our minds are free. And that's really where it must begin, is in our minds, hearts.
Thank you. Thank you both. I think just for the respect of time, I might jump to another question, which I think actually you segued beautifully, Fayemi. And I'm going to share the screen again to give the audience some context. For people who have not been to the ticket gallery where Jennifer's show is being exhibited, it's sort of it shapes like a U or almost like a C. So in a way, the exhibition comes to a close, and it does so with her final work, Black Boy Hope #1, that you see here. And so here you have this beautiful boy's face, contemplated, calm, amidst this vast cosmos. And so I wanted to pose this question to our guests here. What are you hopeful for? Where do you see hope? And maybe Fayemi, we'll start with you.
I have this crazy dream. I hear my friends talking about this thing called abolition. We abolish white supremacy. We abolish prisons, and we abolish the police. Oh my God, such a radical thing to say. What does that look like? And for me, Harriet Tubman is like one of the people, and you have a doll in your show called Harriet. It's one of the people who really emulates that kind of thinking, because at her time, whoever would have thought that the enslaved could be free? And Harriet Tubman had the vision to know that it was possible and worth fighting for. And that dream of abolishing prisons and the need for police and police violence and white supremacy, I think that's the next dream.
For me, I think next stream of hope for me would be equality in the education system. It would be that everyone would have the same books to prepare them to be successful. It would be that everyone would have libraries in their schools. It would be that everyone have nutritional food to eat within the school system. And I think all these things are just elements of what should happen within the whole school system, because right now you have everyone is doing different things, right? And some people are here and here and there, but in the end, education is going to help bring us hope for the future to make sure everyone is successful. So I would hope that hope would look like to me in the future would be that all children have access to be successful and have opportunities to travel and to imagine and to like explore, like why do you have to stay at just one school? Why couldn't they just come and go to different schools in different states and experience different places, meet different people, experience the world? So I feel like all those opportunities are just like what hope is to me. So I would hope that all kids, all students, all children, all people, adults, everybody should have the same opportunities as one another, not over one another. Everyone should have opportunity to be successful.
And in a lot of ways, they're interconnected, right? I mean, I think this idea of all the way from education and all the way to abolishing these structures that have both aggressively suppressed Black and brown people, but also have subversively oppressed. And I think that's when I almost, and then it ebbs back into education, right? Where there's sort of these subversive elements that keep people in a position where, you know, I think about when you talked about what is it, Jennifer, when you talked about what it means to be free as a Black girl, this idea of imagination, how some of that is, if not beaten out of us, stressed out of these bodies, right? Stressed out to the point where there's very little room for that imagination. There's very little room for that hope. And so I think what you both are talking about is this amazing trajectory that is still a structure that obviously needs to be worked into. And one hopes we're starting to see that come to fruition, but obviously, again, there's a lot of work. Okay, so I was just kidding. It looks like we have a little bit more time. I'm going to ask you that one question I skipped over. But yeah, Fayemi, go ahead. Sorry.
Oh, I was just going to say, you mentioned representation, and I think about that too. And the type of openness that we need to have the imagination to rethink these systems, but also the continued power of words and images. And how, and that's what Jennifer, I feel like, is really doing with this exhibition, is amplifying that and the positive representation. We see so much negative depictions about Black people, even when you can see that in how trials are covered. You can see that in media coverage, and how even our movements such as Black Lives Matter are discussed. And it's a image continues to be a very powerful tool that can be used negatively or positively.
So then, right, we look at the Brownies books, right? I mean, we're talking, Du Bois foresaw the need for almost, I was thinking about it actually the other day, thinking of it more like legacy planning, right? Like he knew that the work was going to need to continue. And in order for that work to continue, you need to uplift the youth. You need to get them into a mindset of positive self-affirmation, positive self-awareness. And what's pretty phenomenal is, do we have an example of that today? Are there examples of these kind of publications, these kind of efforts right now? And I know in my work with youth, there's sort of in the nonprofit world it exists, but in terms of, to your point, Fayemi, in terms of representation and imagery and language, do we have that?
Not enough. Yeah. But if you go across the street from your studio, David, a Source of Knowledge bookstore in Newark, New Jersey, you will see a whole wall of books by Black authors for Black children. And I think you're absolutely right that in this world, because we know what our children have to face, that is the role of the parent and mentors to make sure we're providing that kind of self-esteem building and love and nurturing environments as educators as well.
And just to piggyback off of Fayemi about the bookstore and Source of Knowledge, right? In Newark. And so I feel like the book is like basically what we can see in what we have today in the books right now. But like in the book that happened in 1920 that he produced, he knew that it was important to also address what was happening like present time. So he would talk about rights or like things that were happening in the Black and brown community. And also he would throw in some games, he'd throw in some puzzles, he'd throw in some poetry. But this is happening, you can still be playful, you can still be imaginative, but be aware, this is what's happening, this is what you need to do to be successful. So he was able to fuse together all these ideas together into one book to continue to inspire and to uplift, because at that time, children kept witnessing all these horrible and traumatic things that kept happening in the Black community. And he knew that he had to uplift them. And the way that he can do that was to not only just put in games and things that are happening currently, in the world, but then send your photograph, send your best photo with your best dress, And so everybody that I saw in that book, everyone was wearing all white, and their hair was always done in, short crop hair, whatever. But it was just a really good way to uplift, and that's what we can continue to do today. Whether it be a book here, a book here, if we put all those books together, it would definitely be the Brownies book of current day,
Absolutely. Well, look, thank you both so much for sharing your words, your knowledge, your thoughts around all these issues. Obviously, we can keep going, and in a way we will. I want to invite Danny back on, who's going to share questions that, of course, we're welcome. We're hopefully hearing from some of the folks on Facebook and some of the folks who are here with us on Zoom, questions from the public. So thank you, Danny. Thank you for joining us.
First, let me echo David's thanks to you, Jennifer, and Fayemi. I've just been sitting here enjoying soaking this in, and so grateful for your thoughts and your words and your artwork. Thank you. And let me add to that, David, thank you for your wonderful questions and all the thought and care behind your curating of this exhibit and also this conversation tonight. So grateful to all of you. I would like to invite our audience, if you have comments or questions to share, now would be a great time to do that. Use the Q&A button if you're on Zoom and type them in, and we'll get to those momentarily. We have a few nice comments that have come in. And just before I start getting to those, I want to mention a few things. Jane Beck, who is the founder of the Vermont Folklife Center, who is the ethnographer, historian, researcher, who chronicled Daisy Turner's life story and wrote a book about Daisy Turner, is here in the audience tonight. And so thank you, Jane, for your indispensable work, and that, among many other things, led to this possibility. Without that work, this would not have been possible tonight. Thank you, Jane, and thank you to the wonderful Vermont Folklife Center, who do such amazing work throughout our state. So there are some comments and coming in, and I hope people will not be bashful about asking questions, and that includes Ms. Mack's students, many of whom I know are tuned in here tonight. But I wanted to ask something, maybe just to get us started. Jennifer, I just love the aspect of the exhibit that is, it's really the heart of the exhibit, but the way it's embodied in the names of the dolls, the names of the children, because to me, that's like this perfect indicator of maximum hopefulness and potential in these children. And in precisely the ways that you were talking about, what is it to be a fully realized free person? Well, here are examples of that. And I love the stories you told us, when we were talking a few weeks ago about when your two children saw the picture of May and, is it Guyon or Guion? Can you just share that with the audience? Because to me, it embodied like exactly what this is all about, the way your children responded to that picture.
Yeah, thank you. So I was about to wrap it up to send off to Brattleberry Museum, and I'm wrapping it up, and I'm like, okay, stand over there, like do the prints on the floor, and I'm trying to be careful with it. And then my daughter comes out and she sees it, and she's like, well, that's Caden in essence, like that's us. And so I was like, yeah, that is you. And so I felt like, wow, I said, when she said that, I was like, this is what I wanted to hear. If my own child can say they see themselves in my work, then I don't need to do anything else. Like, I feel like she's my critic. Like, she's my critic. If she can't understand what I'm doing, if she can't see herself in my work, then that's a problem, because I feel like every work that I create, I want her to see herself and I want her to see our family in it. And so from that moment, I was like, you know what, this is going to be an awesome show, because at the age of 4, with not much influence about like how to even go into a museum or what to see in a gallery. She's been to a couple, but she's able to see her work, see herself in my work. So I thought that was really awesome. And I feel like it always opens up conversations like, okay, who is May? Who is Gillian? So we not end up reading a story to her. And there's a children's book that's out right now that talks about May and how her teacher told her, that she couldn't be astronaut. You should be a nurse, and it just, and she's sad and she recognizes the emotion. So I felt like it remembered like this can be something that you can do. And sometimes she even says, I want to go to the moon. Will you come with me, mommy? I said, yeah, we can go to the moon anytime. So I feel like just like her seeing herself in my work is just all that I needed to hear. So that really makes me feel warm when I think about that moment.
I thank you. I love that story. And Eleanor just typed in, that just brought tears to my eyes. I feel the same way. So I'm going to share with you a few of the comments that have come in, and it looks like we have maybe a few questions as well. Mark says, beautiful art. Oh, very proud student. Nice. Lucky student to have such a teacher. And I think when you were referring to the bookstore across from where David's studio is, Hardly typed in a note that he's a current patron. He's bought plenty of children's books from there. And I'll just mention as an aside, about 2 weeks from now, you can go to our website for details, but about 2 weeks from now, thanks to Jennifer, we're going to be having a discussion with 3 fabulous children's book author illustrators about Black representation in children's literature. So I hope many of you will tune in for that. Morgan says,
I wanted to just add to that, for people to really understand Jennifer's, so I don't think we talked about this in your bio, but like you were a museum educator, you're an educator. So she thinks holistically about everything. So even if I'm like, Jennifer, come on, like, let's talk about your art. She wants to like talk about all the levels. So the series of programming you guys have coming up through the Brattleboro Talks, Jennifer, I mean, the amount of work and research of gathering all these contacts and names and specialists and professionals to continue this dialogue. I mean, it's just, she can be commended, and thank you, Jennifer, for pulling this together. And so she's not just an artist, you know what I mean? Like she's got the whole vision for this entire experience. So thank you, and thank you for Brattleboro for being able to continue to host these.
Well, thank you for saying that. And I would just add that what we ended up with, we're so proud with the schedule of events that we have coming, and thanks to Jennifer and her ideas and her contacts and suggestions. And I'll just say it's like 1/100th of the ideas that Jennifer had,
right.
And that we could possibly have pursued.
I had like 7 ideas.
I want to get to some of the questions and comments that people have been, kindly typed in here into the Q&A. Christopher says, Jennifer, we're so proud of you and your accomplishments. Best wishes to you from the Atlanta University Center, Professor Christopher Hickey.
Wow, that was my printmaking teacher. He taught me printmaking at Clark. And that was very nice.
Francesca says, first to everyone, I was deeply touched by this presentation and was inspired by everyone's work, but specifically for Mrs. Mack-Watkins. When did you first begin to incorporate history into your artwork? What inspired this?
Wow, okay. First, I probably always try to think about historical. I'm really like into looking at photographs from the past. And so I always try to look at like, I'm really into like the probably 40s, 50s, 60s era, because I really was looking at how people were, carrying themselves, whether it be during civil rights. I went to Montgomery and Selma, let me be like in 2018. And so basically I got a chance to see these photographs up front and like how important it was for for us to continue to carry ourselves, even though we were fighting for justice. And not only just for social issues, but just seeing photographs of like people traveling, just doing everyday things, and just seeing how they were just remarkably just put together, from the hats to the hair to the dresses. And so I was really fascinated by that. So I think, when did it begin? I think it always related to history, probably when I first started going to the Atlanta University Center, which is it's like part of the AUC, which is Atlanta University Center. And that's where I went to Morris Brown. So history was always embedded with even learning about how to be an artist, because I always had artists who referenced history to teach us about our history. So it's always been part of aesthetics of me even thinking about what I want to make with my art. So it's been happening since probably since college, to answer your question. And thank you for coming, Francesca. That's my student.
Thank you for that. Kylar writes, so inspiring. Thank you, Ms. Mack-Watkins. Nikki writes, thank you to all the panelists for sharing your work and practice with us. It's been a joy to listen to this discussion, especially as I sit here with my 8-year-old Black daughter who has been delighted by the imagery and the poetry shared. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I will just mention to Nikki and to others who want to soak in that imagery, if you go to the museum's website, brattleboromuseum.org, and under current exhibits, you find Jennifer's exhibit. There's a photo gallery of the images themselves. You can also kind of take a virtual tour of the gallery, so you can really spend time with these inspiring, wonderful images. Sarah says, Fayemi spoke about creating an intentional community of artists with the collective. And I wonder if Jennifer, Fayemi, and David could talk a bit about how they each build community and the role it plays in their lives and their art making. So maybe we'll go, maybe each of you could respond to that about building community and how it relates to your life and your art.
Well,
Fayemi, do you want to start?
Sure. In college, I was an organizer. And so to a certain degree, I think I still bring a lot of that intentional collaboration into my practice, into my work, my life. It's just how I prefer to live. No person is an island. And this work that we have to do, it's not individual. And collectivity just feeds my spirit. And so it's a part, now I work for City Hall, as David mentioned. I never would have thought my work as a writer or an artist would have brought me into local government. And we have this amazing mayor who is also himself an artist and an activist. So I get the privilege of working now on behalf of our entire arts community to elevate the work that we do. And that's been a real joy.
And I'll just quickly say, this is gonna gush over Fayemi for a little bit, but Fayemi is like a constitution here in Newark. I mean, like, you go to any arts event, you're gonna see her. And I just think, I had the pleasure of working with her and meeting her at Al Jaira, the Center for Contemporary Art. And then from there, I mean, even if I'm not intentionally looking to find you, I find you, and I think that's just so people understand Fayemi's presence and hold in a Newark arts community. It's vital and it's present. So thank you.
I absolutely really love my arts community. It's like an extended family, really.
Thank you.
I think for me, as artists, I feel like I enjoy seeing like everyone's expertise and passions come together to make like a final product, whether it be like a event, whether it be a book, project like how Fayemi I worked on together. And I really enjoy just seeing pieces come together, because I feel like, it's important that we take everyone's gifts and come together to make a bigger impact and make a bigger voice. And I also think about like how I can use myself as, I'm a printmaker as well. I'm a printmaker. And so I like to also look and see how different print organizations are, collaborating, working across internationally and nationwide. So right now I'm currently on a committee for diversity for Mid-America Print Council. And I'm also working with exhibitions as well, just to make sure that the voices are varied and making sure my voice can be heard and make an impact in the print community. So I'm thinking it's important to also do local, take care of our communities, but then also think of how we can take our local artists and expand out so that everybody can be included. And so I think all those aspects are really important. So I enjoyed working, on the local community, and I like working nationwide, and like one day I work, international, and then it'll be even bigger, But I think all those are really important components, and they each need each other. And so that's why I enjoyed, that's why I continue to enjoy working with other artists. And so it's kind of what I have to do as an artist, I think.
Yeah, and Jennifer,
Thank
actually,
you.
that's a great segue to my response, which is honestly, my community in a lot of ways is the artists that I surround myself with, like Jennifer and Fayemi, and I wear, like them, I wear a number of hats. And so there's the aspect of me as an independent curator. There's also the aspect of me who, whether I like it or not, I'm in the arts landscape in a way. And so people do ask me for recommendations or to be part of panels. And so while that can feel like extra work, that is, I feel like my responsibility to be on those panels, to be on those review sessions, and make sure that our voices as people of color are present, and that those artists are given opportunities and ample opportunity to be able to present themselves. And so I've been blessed to be able, New York Department of Cultural Affairs, I've been on review panels for them. I've been invited to the Institute Museum and Library Sciences. And so I feel like in a way, in this element of community and how that impacts my work as, let's say, an arts administrator, is my responsibility. It's a responsibility that I have to uphold as I've gotten to this particular position. And as an artist, it's become something that people look to me towards, and it is a challenge. I'm an image maker, and I always want to know, like, how does image making really, how does that impact the community, and what role can they play when you think about aesthetics and when you have like a studio practice that's so specific. So that's been a great challenge and a great way to shake up my thinking and inviting the community into my work, but also empowering them to like use my tools, use my resources to produce their own amazing art. So I have some projects coming up in the next year or so that really do that invite people and empower people to use the very sources that I use to produce their own visions. So it's interesting. I think for artists, and I don't know if Fayemi and Jennifer, if you would agree, but I feel like as artists of color, it's kind of integral to the practice. Even those of us who might fight against it, it ends up being very much a part of how we navigate the arts culture.
Great.
Thank you for those responses, and thank you, Sarah, for that question. And in the spirit of giving credit where it's due, I want to say a special thanks to Sarah Freeman, who works here at the Brattleberry Museum and who connected us with David a few years ago and curated David's show, and that's led to this. And so thank you, Sarah.
Thank you, Sarah.
We have a comment here from Christine. David beautifully facilitated. Jennifer, incredibly impactful and beautiful work. Fayemi, your poem brought me to tears. Thank you, Christine.
I know Christine from Algira. Hi, Christine.
Okay.
Yeah, I know Christine from Lower East Side Print Shop. Hey, Christine.
Christine.
It's kind of amazing, right? I mean, this Zoom thing that we all ended up having to do because we had no choice, and one of the one of the benefits is that we end up reconnecting and with each other in this way, and being able to sort of, you know, stay in touch with each other and share with each other. Really, that's been really rewarding, actually, an aspect of all of this. I see a comment here from Catherine, who says, we have so many blank buildings here in Brattleboro that need more art. Well, wouldn't it be something if they were filled with Jennifer and Fayemi and David art?
Sounds like she wants a mural program.
Yeah,
Yep.
it sounds that way. Well,
Mayor,
I have to work on that. Zara writes, my question, do you feel like the spirit of hope and optimism comes naturally, or is it a spirit you feel like you have to fight for and continually remind yourself to maintain?
Yeah, you got to fight for it. Absolutely. It does not come naturally. You get cynical, you get bitter, you get angry, you lose hope. You think things will always be this way. And Martin Luther King, you know, we have so many examples of why of people who held on to hope and got us a little bit further. And I know it's a long road, but every time we'll get a little bit further. And the better we educate our children, who are the future, they will take the baton and take it the next bit of the way for along. But no, it does not come naturally. And it doesn't. And sometimes I have to unplug from it all just to recharge and restore and have rituals and practices spiritually, whatever that is for anyone, to remind myself of the importance of love, not just in word, but in action and deed, and in just your presence and showing up for people.
Definitely. So I really can go off of what Fayemi said. I feel like hope is something that you have to like almost like put in your hand and like protect it. You know, there's going to be all type of people that want to try to take some of your hope, but you got to hold that hand tight to make sure that you have to hold on to whatever it is you have to continue to be hopeful for. You hold on to that, because there'll be days where like you feel like you don't know why you're here. Like, what are you doing? What am I doing? Making an impact. And you'll have days where you're just in tears, like you go through so many emotions, and recognize those emotions and be okay with that. You write, you could, listen to your favorite, music, or you could, read a book or make some art, of course. But you find ways to continue to hold on to that hope, because you have to continue to protect it, because no matter what has happened and continue to happen in this world in present time, like as of right now, we have to continue to hold on to hope, and you have to fight for it. You have to continue to protect it, because hope is what we have to get us through these type of times.
Yeah, and I'll add my friend and colleague Taina just shared something really interesting, like really important for all of us to remember, that our Black brothers and sisters who are, let's say, in jobs right now are like doing their job and watching what's happening in the news, especially with regards to the sentencing and the verdict that came out yesterday, and continuing to have to navigate the ever-changing landscape and still doing their job.
That's real.
And still functioning. Like how important it is for us to remember that we're all people, and that we have to, acknowledge that some of us, especially our Black brothers and sisters, are going through this time where stuff is just flooding in, and they're still being asked to function normally, and being asked to function even, now add COVID on top of that, and Zoom meetings and time sucks and all this other stuff that's happening with our work life and this new work-life balance. I mean, that's just something for all of us to remember right now. And I think it's also, to do check-ins with our friends and family, to do check-ins with our colleagues, and remember that this, I would use expletives, but that this stuff is happening right now, and to remember that people are having to absorb it and still are being expected to function as if nothing's happening.
It helps to give each other just some grace, just some grace, to speak gently, to each other. And if you don't want to comment, you know, and you just want to take some time to reflect and be still. All of these things are good things, I think, for us right now to take our time with this moment. Um, yeah.
Yeah.
I would just add, I was listening to Minnesota State Attorney General Keith Ellison speak yesterday after the sentencing. And he said something that was so powerful to me, that just struck me so powerfully. He said, you know, there was a time when we couldn't have imagined slavery ever ending. And there was a time when we couldn't have ever imagined Black people getting the right to vote in this country. And it feels now like it often feels now like it's impossible to imagine a time when there won't be this kind of violence and the kind of suffering and inequality that exists now. But that time will come, and it's just, you know, it just struck me very powerfully hearing him say that yesterday.
It will, but we have to work for it.
Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
together.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, there's
And
like
he
a sense of
he
faith.
made that point as well.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think there's a sense of faith that one has to uphold, but right. I mean, to everyone's point, it's one of those things that it's just gonna take that much work, and it's gonna take the sort of self-reflection of our other colleagues in all fields to think about how the changes that need to be made.
Thank you all for those thoughts and responses. I have a few more things here. Is that okay? I have a couple more questions and comments. Well, let me just complete Zara's comment. She said, in addition to asking that wonderful question, that really important question, Zara also writes, and a special shout out to Ms. Mack-Watkins, who spent the whole day helping our Afrofuturism research team put together a presentation in school and is now spending the night displaying original, bold, truly inspiring artwork. Absolutely insane. For sure.
It was nice to put it together. You know, they're like, oh, well, here's a student work. So basically my Afrofuturism research team, they worked really hard this year. And we've been through a lot of different times and most of the students in the group were remote. So I felt like my job as an educator, whether they were in school this day or not, was to continue to give them hope. And I would give them like, okay, here are our tasks, you know, step 1, 2, and 3. And then I would say, okay, here's Stevie Wonder, or here's LeVar Burton, and like give them like snippets of history. And so if they were wondering who it would be up to them to continue to research on their own. But I didn't know if it was going to work. I didn't know if they were even going to present, and they surprised me. And they were able to put a synopsis of everything they did this year, and they did it over in a day. They're amazing writers, amazing individuals. They sent me photographs. I printed them out and I framed them and put it here and displayed it. And they did a great job of presenting the videos and playlists. So I want to say shout out to my Afrofuturism team, because you know you guys about to graduate and you work really hard. And thank you for coming here tonight.
Well, all of you and all the different roles that you've juggled, not to mention just your personal lives, your obligations to your family and friends, and it's really mind-boggling and inspiring. Let's see, Jared writes, hi, Jennifer and Fayemi. I've loved this discussion. Thank you, Danny and David, for hosting and curating the exhibition and programs. Congratulations, Jennifer and Fayemi. Make sure to save a copy of Volume 2 for the Met.
We got it.
What's up?
Mara Williams, the chief curator here at Brattleberry Museum, is in the audience and says, David, Jennifer, and Fayemi, a fantastic program on every level, artistic, cultural, and human. Thank you. Thank you, Mara. Sydney asked the question, how do you navigate between acknowledging the deep pain and oppression of Black and Brown people while also uplifting and empowering both communities in your art and literature?
It's a great question.
Very good question.
Great question. For me personally, I study. And this is why Black feminist literature is so important to me, because there's so much wisdom and knowledge that has already been shared with us. And sometimes I need to return to it. I need Toni Morrison. I need Alice Walker. I need Bell Hooks. I need Audre Lorde. They feed my spirit and give me what I need to, and the motivation to continue thinking through these issues. And there's a whole slew of new authors, new poets that are just doing it right now that really lift me, you know. And some days the pain is deep and you cry and write, you cry and work. But we have such a tremendous legacy of freedom fighters who have sacrificed to get us to where we are. How dare we not do our part? That's how I feel.
Mm-hmm. I think for me as an artist, I study too. I see, you know, historically what has happened in the past and what continues to happen. I study artists from the past who have been able to depict in their work, whether it be murals. You know, you got Aaron Douglas, right? You have Jacob Lawrence, you have Charles White, you have Elizabeth Catlett. Like all these artists, we're like, you know what? All these things are happening in the world around us, and yes, technically we are great artists, right? But we also are aware, and we also are human, and they're able to take all these historically things that were happening in the past, whether they lived it or not. They're able to put that in some type of imagery form, whether it be murals or prints or paintings, and collectively come together. Like you have people like Ramira Bearden, who formed the Spiral Group. You know, you have Emma Amos, she was in there, you know, as the only female. You know, you have all these artists who came around collectively making art centers to make sure that the community had art classes. So I'm constantly looking at documents of like, okay, how do they organize this community effort, you know, in Harlem, by this sculptor? You know, how do they make this book that talked about the Great Migration? How did Jacob do that? And I never forget seeing the exhibition. Was it MoMA? I can't remember, but it was a big Jacob Lawrence exhibition. Is the Great Migration series, and so I got a chance to see all these small panels, but there are small panels, egg temper. He mixed himself, and he's able to make this big response to historically what had happened and how the Great Migration actually happened. And so I think for me, it's constantly studying artists from the past and to influence my work.
Thank you. Thank you both. David, did you want to respond to that as well?
Sure. I think it comes down to, and I wonder actually, now that I'm hearing from Fayemi and Jennifer, and certainly when I think about my practice, I do wonder if there is sort of this necessity for artists of color to think about. Honestly, the research comes from the fact that it's not a part of our education. It's not a part of our general education. It's certainly not in undergraduate surveys. It's certainly not in, I'll say it's not, I don't believe it's in graduate surveys either. Like unless you're seeking it out. And a lot of us are seeking it out because it's not present in the curriculum. It's not present in the professors. A lot of that's changing now. So I think a lot of our practices are based in research because we're seeking out the narrative that has been withheld from us. Right. And these stories that have been withheld from us. And then we're looking for those kindred spirits. We're looking for our contemporaries. And so I think in a lot of ways, whether you intend to or not, it's part of our nature to look out for what we're all doing and who to look out for and who to look for support. And I would say on a contemporary level, like the three of us, I've known Jennifer and Fayemi for years now, and we continue to support each other and find ways to continue to work with each other, and that's effortless. I can't imagine. I don't think it feels like work. It's kind of effortless how this all happens, and I think a lot of that feeds the work that we produce. So, getting past thinking about the history that we have to face, and reflecting on that and facing it, but doing that with support from our peers, and so, I mean, I can go on and on about how Jennifer and Fayemi have like impacted me on various levels throughout my artistic career. But I think it's just really, that's how one gets by, quite frankly. I think it's the research, and it's also our peers that really keep us grounded and sane, and let us cry, and get upset about this stuff, and push us, and give us the swift kick in the ass to keep going, honestly.
Thank you all for those responses, and thank you, Sydney, for that question. The last comment we have here is from Sandy, who writes, "This is so what my soul needed today. The healing power of art is pure bliss. Thank you for this." Thank you, Sandy. And I absolutely second that, and think that's probably a great place for us to wrap up. Jennifer, Fayemi, David, I can't thank you enough for what you've shared with us in our gallery, and also here tonight. And I echo all of the sentiments that our audience has expressed about how meaningful your work is, and your thoughts are, and how grateful we are for you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, David, and thank you, Fayemi, for being here with me and to be able to share your words and your passion with our audience. And I don't even know how I can express in words, but all I can say is if you were here, I would give all y'all hugs, but we can't, we're in virtual space. But I just want to thank, and I want to also thank Danny, for, following my vision. Like I said before, like I had 7 ideas. I'm like, how can I get it down to 3? And so like, it was very difficult. But thank you, Danny, to all the hundreds of emails that we kind of figured it out. And it came out to be an awesome event. And I'm looking forward to seeing more. And I think just in general, like I wanted just to see how my art was able to like transcend across like different areas, from like literature to like collaborative approaches, and just collectively sustainability, just like sustaining like lifelong like relationships. And like I feel like I wanted to have books, so I said let's have the books in the gift shop, so that this can not just be this moment, but this can be a moment that can live on. So I really wanted to make sure that happened in the other programs that's going to happen, and look out for the other information that Danny will share later. But I really enjoyed this conversation, and thank you so much for everyone for being here tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you again, Jennifer. And so just picking up on what you're mentioning, another way that this can continue to ripple out into the world is the recording of tonight's event will be available on the museum's website within the next day or two. That's brattleboromuseum.org. So for those of you in the audience who know somebody who really would appreciate or really needs to hear this conversation, you'll find it there, and please feel free to share it. While you're there, you can check out recordings of lots of other events we've been presenting online over the past year. You go to our website, which is brattleboromuseum.org, and then events, and then video archives. And so that's where this one will be. And please join us again a week from tonight, when Jennifer will be back here on the screen, and she will be joined by Doricia Mia DeMar of Black Women in Visual Art, and Novella Ford of the Schomburg Center for Research in Black Culture, for a discussion about holding space for personal narratives and what we can learn from history. That's 1 week from tonight at 7 p.m. Same deal on Zoom, and you go to our website and register. But if you happen to be in the Brattleboro area and have an appetite for an actual in-person, non-screen-based art experience, well, please come to the museum. We're open Wednesday through Sunday, 10 to 4. There's plenty of room for social distancing, masks, and safe, and we would love to see you. But if you can't come to Brattleboro in person, you can still take a virtual tour of Jennifer's exhibit and our other exhibits by going to our website, brattleboromuseum.org. I think that does it. Jennifer, Fayemi, David, thank you again.
Thank you.
Really look forward to seeing you in person, hopefully before too long. Thank you, all of you in the audience tonight, and thank you, those of you who asked questions and wonderful questions and shared your comments and thoughts. Please stay safe, take good care of yourselves and each other, and hopefully we'll get to see each other soon. Good night.
Good night, everybody.
Good night. Take care.